Anyway, here we go. So yeah, Spencer, thank you very much for spending your time with us tonight, and welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm the
Yeah.
best you could find, man.
Yeah,
So
he was the best that I could find for this month. So I was really looking for some really solid guests, but Spencer was available.
no, if you
No,
guys couldn't tell, there's a very healthy relationship and rapport here. It's really nice to just be here. I think this is like something that I'm very much looking forward to, and there's also some familiar faces there. So thank you guys for sending over the friendly chat messages. Friendly chat messages went off Mauricio and Hutch and Jerome and all the other faces if I'm missing some people. So really excited to be here. Pumped.
yeah. So yeah, and yeah, just I have the utmost respect for Spencer. So everything I said about that was you completely in jest. You guys, I think, picked that up already. But hey, Spencer, do us a favor and tell us about you and your background and kind of what got you into real estate. And take as long as you want getting us there, but pertinent
Yeah,
details along the way.
yeah, happy to. So just geographically, guys, I'm out here in the Bay Area, California. I was born and raised here. I do like to mention to folks in case your immediate reaction guard goes up if you're around the country. That's like, oh great, another dumbass Californian who's totally out of touch with the rest of reality. So I did live outside of California for at least a duration of over 10 years. So that gives me some kind of street cred back outside of California. Now we can put that topic aside. And so, I actually grew up, believe it or not, in a real estate household. My dad was a broker for 30 years. So he had me working open houses as a teenager. And I really didn't like that at all. I mean, frankly, I wanted nothing to do with real estate. That's why I left and went to tech companies right after college. It's much cooler in the Bay Area to go to tech companies and say that you do that instead of telling your friends that you work in a real estate business. So I ended up going through a journey that was like a 13-year ride, pretty hardcore one too, where I started off with the big company experience, very fortunate to start at Intuit. Most people know that company from QuickBooks and TurboTax. So my key roles in that world of fintech, which is the cool way just to say financial tech companies, was building big operations teams and sales groups, hiring hundreds of people and trying to build high velocity groups that were bringing products to market. I somehow found my way into the biggest fix and flip lender in the country, called LendingHome, and that was my last kind of corporate run. So I was at LendingHome for about 3.5 years, maybe under 4 years. And I just bring that up, guys, because I was already very attracted in the small business startup world to solving really boring, unsexy problems. And most people are like, well, why is that relevant here? Well, it's relevant because underwriting is pretty unsexy to the vast majority of human beings on this planet. I think like this group on this call today probably thinks otherwise. If you're here, you probably find this stuff interesting. I certainly do. Most people think it's boring. I think it's incredibly exciting stuff. And when I was at LendingHome, I was tasked with scaling a loan origination group of going from 150 individual transactions per month to scaling the origination group to doing 600 individual fix and flip loans, hard money loans per month. And that was about $4 billion with a B by the time I left. So that was like, if anyone that wants to say, do you have enough experience? I always tell them, I don't know, the 600 transactions a month over a duration of 3 years count, anytime they feel like doing any of that very unhelpful browbeating, which still does exist in real estate. And I find completely unhelpful, particularly for people that are trying to enter the space and do it in a constructive way. So, but I promise I don't have a chip on my shoulder. Other than that, in commercial real estate, we've now done 21 commercial transactions as a co-sponsor. Very deliberately started Madison Investing on nights and weekends while I was still working at LendingHome, waking up at 4 a.m. to get my 2 to 3 hours of work on my side hustle done before I went to a very demanding day job, and then coming home at night and still doing more work for the business. I did quit that career, quote unquote, retired from that career about coming up on about 1.5 years ago. It was about, I guess it was like 4 or 5 months before the pandemic. Great time to quit your day job.
Perfect time.
That's perfect time. Heavy sarcasm on there. But honestly, it couldn't have been a better time. which is really weird to say out loud now. We've been absolutely thriving, and I look at like momentum as a very real thing. And I don't want to yammer at you guys any further. That's kind of my story. I mean, I will say that without getting TMI for folks, Brian and Jerome and others that that I know pretty well at this point, like you guys have heard me on podcasts interviewed before, but I just like to mention this briefly because I think it matters. Like we all have our various why, that drives us, and like that growing up inside of a brokerage business in real estate was very eye-opening because I also saw my dad be like in the top 10, top 5, top 3 brokers in the country in residential for a period of time. It was a comfortable life. And then the whole thing crumbled just completely. I mean, like our one source of primary income for our whole family, mom didn't work. It just went down to zero basically because, brother died of cancer, parents got divorced, yada, 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 tragedy layered on top of tragedy beyond that. And seeing that leaves a mark, it leaves a mark on knowing what happens if you don't go out and proactively solve for your own family. And you got to figure out income streams for your family. You got to figure out how to grab the figurative machete and chop through all this financial aspects of life. And so sorry for getting so heavy so early in the bio, Brian, but I just wanted to share that with people. I think it hopefully is more relevant for folks than just talking about getting straight into the tactical stuff. But.
I think that's actually a very important point that you make because you've said this many times before. One of the most risky things to have financially is a single income. And I think you lived through that, which gives you a lot of credence whenever you make a post to that nature on LinkedIn or whenever you come on a podcast and say the same thing. Is and I believe it too. The most risky thing that you can have is a single income. I've seen, fortunately for me, I've been active duty military for 19 and a half years now, and we'll be retiring in 136 days. But I'm not counting or anything, but I've seen, my dad with a single income, lose his job. I've seen, my brother with a single income lose his job. My sister with a single income lose her job, and it's crushing. It can actually crush your financial picture if that's all you have. And so, Spencer, if I could, I want to rewind a little bit. You said you were working at LendingTree. You were doing 600 loans a month. Billions of dollars in transactions. What prompted you to start the side hustle?
Yeah, totally. And if anyone is wanting to go check it out too, you could probably even go find a video of me talking about, the training infrastructure literally on their website still, if you wanted to right now. I think it's a pretty good video personally, but on LendingHome's website. So without going too far back, I'll just say when you work at super early stage tech companies, it's freaking hard. I mean, like all the stories that people say are true. It's like 12 to 14-hour days in the office. If you go early stage enough at one of these companies where it all sounds glamorous, you get equity like that could somehow turn into a big 7-figure payout at Google. But before any of that happens, most of them companies don't make it. But they still go through this grueling period of time where you have to be all hands on deck all day. And so before I got to LendingHome, I was at a different company. They still might have an exit like that. So I'm not banking on that income, less predictable than real estate income. But I think about a specific moment in particular, Brian, to that question, which is like, I had an infant son at the time. I have 2 young boys now. Hopefully they don't bust in the door because I just heard them get home. The door is locked. But I remember not seeing my infant son for a period of like 2 weeks in the evenings, and I know that this sounds like a sob story, like a true first world problem, given the nature of what's happening in the world these days and in general. But I would just say that was pretty unacceptable to me, and I felt like, what are we all really doing here? Like what are we doing here if it sounds cool to say you work for a certain company and it might have a theoretical, not monopoly money exit in a period of 5 to 7 to 10 years down the line. It's just not, the calculation didn't make sense to me. It didn't compute, and that stuck with me, long story short. And thankfully, I had coworkers at LendingHome a couple of years later that I saw firsthand at work between the hours of 5 and 8. Everyone's gone. And I just saw a few of these guys and I knew them personally. I respected them a lot. I still do. I'm still in touch with them too. And I'd be like, what are they working on? I'm like, what the hell are those guys doing over there? And lo and behold, I mean, they were actually over there starting a company that they ultimately left that company to build, and they're still building it now. And ironically, they even kind of reached out a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, let's partner on a deal." And I was like, "Well, we do multifamily, we don't do single family," but but it's a cool outcome a couple years later.
Yeah. I think that resonates with a lot of people as well. I mean, you get the day job going, you get the hustle, and you get more and more successful, and that's the hours that you put in is absolutely true in my career too. I think I'm looking at the top of my screen, I see Emma, and I think she understands a lot better that type of hours. Once you get to a certain rank in the military, I mean, it's almost like it's expected to put in those 12 and 13 and 15-hour days, 6 days a week. But
The
anyway,
optics matter.
yeah, it does. And I, for one, want to see my kids. I think a lot of the reason I started building the side hustle was very similar. Just wanting to be around my kids for those special occasions. And there were a lot of times where my line of work was in the way in a lot of ways. So
Totally.
yeah. So let's talk about I guess those initial stages when you were coming up with the real estate exit plan from LendingHome. Where did you start, and how did you get the ball rolling?
Yeah, geez. I went out and I started shopping coaching programs, and not paid to say any of this. I've been through 4 paid coaching programs. There's a broad range of quality out there. I do think the first one that I started with was, just to give him credit, was Michael Blanc's, just the base level pay for the syndicator deal analyzer, $50 a month Slack channel thing. Because I understood underwriting on residential from my day job. I really did. I was feeling great on that. But I didn't get the commercial side. I didn't get the terminology all the way yet. There's a few things that are actually, I would say a lot of it. I mean, despite whatever people might want to say, and they're welcome to their opinion, it's super similar in a lot of ways. It's just bigger numbers, and it's just interchange some terms. But there's a select few things that are very different, right? And so I just wanted to go and hustle hard on the underwriting, and then I really believe in that ethos of like, competence equals confidence. I know a rhyming platitude might put people to sleep, but like that applies to me. I don't fake it well. I never have. I will only be the guy who can kind of get behind. If I can get behind something, and I believe in something, and I understand something, then I can get pretty unstoppable. But if I don't understand something well enough, I can't lean in, So I really wanted to lean in heavy to that aspect of commercial real estate first. And then went through a couple other coaching programs in quick succession. I got to give credit, though. I know we're talking a lot about things such as capital raising today. I'd say that one nugget that came out of that experience, I forget where it came exactly, but it was within the whole Michael Blanc ecosystem of saying, make a mock deal.
Yeah.
Just if you don't have a deal, and most people won't when they want to start these conversations with prospective investors, make a mock deal that's in line with what you're trying to go build relationships around.
Yeah.
That is a brilliant piece of advice, because I mean, I'll maybe save a story for later if we can dip back into it later, Brian, but just this week we had an LP, a limited partner, passive investor in our own group, and I'll leave him completely anonymous because I respect the hell out of this guy, and he's an investor of ours, but he is now trying to go active. And he was hitting the wall pretty hard on trying to engage in his first degree connections, and then friends in his network, all the right places that any of us should go if we're trying to go out and have a, hey, you want to invest in a deal kind of conversation with people. And it turns out is because, I mean, what my diagnosis was when he asked for kind of informal coaching, I was like, well, what are you putting in front of them for them to react to? And he didn't have anything to put in front of him, So it's like, if I woke up in an ethereal sense and I say to someone, hey, would you theoretically want to invest in this thing that doesn't really exist, but do it in 5 years? It's a mismatch. You can't really have a conversation about that. So
yeah, I think it's an amazing tip that works extremely well. And I am a Michael Blanc graduate myself, but yeah, I put a lot of time into that sample deal package, and it's a game changer. I mean, a lot of questions will come out of it. People will actually see what you're explaining to them, and be able to look through sample numbers. It's amazing. So I like that tip.
Yeah. Is it I don't want to offend people if I'm a little informal under this jacket. So Jerome, don't get too excited if you're going to see tattoos. Okay, that's what I'm not doing a conference presentation, but I live in California. I don't need an outdoor jacket here. So yeah, she wanted to just talk a little bit more about kind of the transition.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think when I was gearing up to go and lean into the multifamily stuff in particular, guys, everyone says go network and take massive action. I did read, I do think education is key, and I read 24 books. I listened to 400 podcasts. I think that was arguably too much. I think, I mean, dive in. Like I'm a bit of an obsessive dude when it comes down to me getting focused on something. So probably could have cut that number in a third, right? On both fronts before I started taking action to apply that stuff. So I guess the nugget that I would just want to lean into, Jerome, I know you want to see the sleeve, man. We'll get to the sleeve just naturally. All right. He's talking about more tattoos that have been occurring. So thank you, Jerome. But I think in terms of when to take the action is important. Even more important is where you need to aim the action. And this is the point that I can't tell you how much matters to that. If I convey nothing else today that lands with you and you find helpful, hopefully you get one thing away from this. It would be massive action is only useful if it's applied towards something that you've chosen deliberately. Because strategy choice is the biggest single miss in the real estate investing community. People bleed years of life and experience and hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. Hopefully the number ain't that big, but they'll bleed that much time and resource running down to become a flipper before they realize, oh crap, I don't like swinging a hammer. I don't personally. I'm awful with being handy. I use YouTube inside my house every day, and it's okay that my wife laughs at me about that. I'm comfortable with myself. Like when it comes to choosing to be, let's say, like if you want to be a broker, it's an active strategy. Flipper, active strategy. We're talking multifamily today. Even within multifamily, there's different layers and like flavors of like what side of the deal that you want to be able to focus on, right? And so I had a mentor say to me very bluntly, when I think I was about to go pay somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000 for a private coach and invest in a private coach for multifamily, because I was going to go down the track of being a lead sponsor, right? Well, to be the person who's running that entire asset, managing the asset, pulling the team together, all that stuff. Like the really impressive and Herculean and incredible task, I mean, it's the things that Brian knows very well with the Four Oaks team. And so, and that mentor just said to me, dude, are you going to move? Because I live in California, I live in the Bay Area, and I'm looking for cash flowing apartment opportunities to buy at a discount. In 2021, that would be a tall order, a little taller than I can muster. And so he said, dude, you live in a money state. You don't live in a deal state. Are you going to move? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay. And so do I know people who are out there being lead sponsors, doing stuff remotely? Absolutely. Are they crushing it? Yeah. They are people who are extraordinarily high horsepower. And by that, I just mean not only they're smart. I mean, I could pick out a couple of guys that are doing like remote management BRRRR projects for Ohio-based 3 to 4 parallel BRRRR projects in a row, while also doing a demanding senior operations job. It's at very publicly known tech companies, but they're the exception. And so I'm not here to break hearts today. I'm just here to give you the advice that I wish I got earlier. Because when I first heard that feedback from a mentor, it broke my heart a little bit. And it was the best advice I could possibly have heard. I was about to go lose $50,000 on a program that was not in line with my goals. And so I promise we'll go down to take the dip here before we do the build back up and everyone feels positive and jazzed. But like, that's the reality. You just have to take a bite out of it and then pick a strategy that aligns to your strengths and your resources and your time constraints. Because there's a kind of a follow-up comment I'll probably make on that one too, if and when you'll allow me.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing that I very much appreciate about what you do is you remind me of that a lot. A lot of the stuff that you're throwing up on LinkedIn or when I hear you You talked a lot about the vanity metrics, people who are chasing the wrong things, people who are chasing followers, who are chasing downloads, who are chasing comments, or just views. But I mean, the first time I heard the term vanity metric was from you, and that's kept me a lot of times from focusing on the wrong things. Why am I posting on LinkedIn? Why am I posting on Instagram? Why am I doing this? Is it so I get the followers, or is it so that I can attract people to our brand and to our business? And
Right.
anyway, I very much appreciate that focus that you bring, and appreciate that you put it so succinctly. You need to apply the action. I forget exactly how you said it, but apply the action in a focused, deliberate direction.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, Brian. I mean, I can't take credit for vanity metrics as a term. I could come from someone much smarter than me. But whenever you see those ranty posts
Mhm.
on LinkedIn, half the time it's me just trying to remind myself to take my own BS. I think it's just so important to constantly validate and remind ourselves, like, oh man, that post right there that I worked on for a long time, arguably too long, no one no one read it. So it's in the end, you just have to kind of pick your battles. But the one comment I was going to make, guys, that could be helpful is when you're trying, like when I was sitting at my day job, demanding day job, like, I have like a direct reporting line with multiple people relying on me. At that point, I had carved out, and I had literally looked across the average. I'd taken the average from the past like 1 to 2 months. I looked at my actual calendar. I use Google Calendar, whatever your jam might be, if it's Outlook or otherwise. And I got an average number that I would be comfortable carving out, like hour count. And it was 10 hours a week. And I said 10 hours, like, how can I get that 10 hours and use every minute possible in line with the goal that I'm focused on right now? And it can't be like a man, let me go half do it and then come back to it later. Like if I'm going to go learn how to underwrite deals, I'm only going to do that. And I'm going to do that for the next, 7 or 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks. I forget the durations that I did specifically for each task. But that was kind of the thing, because the moment you put a finite number and cap on that, scarcity will take care of the rest. So I just wanted to encourage that. I even put like a term around it that I borrowed from someone who I'm told after the fact, by the way. I think that there was a military term, so you're gonna have to keep me honest on this one, Brian. But LIMFACTs, limiting factors. Maybe a different branch or something, but like it was basically capital. There's 3 limiting factors, and we all like a framework. But I would say time, capital, expertise. I knew that I had to take stock of how much time I had per week to go work on anything related to real estate, to multifamily real estate. I knew I had limited capital, and capital doesn't just mean money in this case. I'm like kind of stretching the definition. It means physical money, sure, like liquid. It also means your network, like your relationships you have available, and the most under discussed topic out of all of these, which is your health. Like, how do you have physical energy? Like, if you don't have physical energy to do appropriate learning of something, I mean, I was waking up at 4 a.m. because that was better use for my biological clock. I am not a night guy. I'm not a night owl. At 1 a.m., I am dead. And so at 4 a.m., way easier, even though it's brutally hard. That was less brutally hard for me than 1 a.m., So it's all those things about like literally just talking about going and trying to stay focused and pick a finite number of hours per week, and then lean in hard to learning the underwriting, and then going off and eventually building relationships with folks through all the regular channels. I mean, such as like awesome meetups like this, Bigger Pockets. I mean, for me, it was LinkedIn. I had used LinkedIn in a very unique way for the past decade. My LinkedIn use case, this isn't a pro LinkedIn pitch, by the way. LinkedIn fits for our strategy. So we can come back to more about why it aligned to our target customer or target investor persona and all that stuff in a bit. But went out, started connecting with people in my own LinkedIn network, and then started just getting to know them from a different lens altogether, because I was the tech guy. I was not the real estate guy. And so that was kind of a whole separate thing about building relationships and reframing who you are in the eyes of the people you already know. That's tough. That takes time. Arguably, I'd say that takes even longer than finding fresh people and just building great relationships from the ground up with them through that lens.
Yeah, I mean, that brings a smile to my face, because when I started, chasing, deals and trying to bring investors in, I talked to people who I'd known for 5 or 10 or 20 years, and, tell them all about this, how great multifamily is, how great real estate is. And the most common response I got was, wait, aren't you a Marine?
Yeah.
Or did you retire and just not tell me? So that was like literally the most common response I had to anytime I talked about real estate multifamily was people knew me as Brian the Marine,
Right.
and you say the same thing, the exact same thing. They knew you as Spencer the tech guy,
Yes.
so, well, while we're on the subject, what did you do to overcome that?
Yeah. You know, uh, I mean, I would ask for a show of hands for who here has to actually ever deal with imposter syndrome, but I probably don't need to because it's going to be 100% of the audience, I mean, it's 100% of the audience is going to deal with everybody. Every human on the planet has imposter syndrome. And if they don't, then they're some kind of sociopath I don't understand or can't relate to. I mean, it strikes all of us, despite how qualified that we might be. And wrestling with that is real, So I think first and foremost, you're not going to be able to come across as authentically ready to be a real estate person. There's no magic moment where you are a real estate professional until you deem it so and are taking action. And so you have to believe it first. And I try not to get too far down the road of like, pure Kool-Aid pouring. But I would say if you don't like the taste of your own Kool-Aid, you've got to go back and check your own recipe. Like, like you got to believe in your own capabilities, and you have to believe that wholeheartedly. So when I went out, I mean, I only on my first raise, because I know we're talking about capital raising here eventually a little bit more. I mean, I raised like 75 grand. I mean, it was small. It was embarrassingly small. So when I hear about people coming out and they're like, oh my gosh, I raised yada yada $1 million amount on the first raise, I was like, are you talking money in the escrow account? Because are you talking to people that said that they might think about it someday? Because my number was $75,000. That means it was not pretty, and it was from people that I had known for 10 years, and that was their "I'll take a bet on you" money.
Yeah.
And then you have to build from there. But really, it's about self-confidence and like being able to go out and know in your heart of hearts that like you actually are qualified to be talking about this. You are qualified, and you've done the right diligence on the individual project. But and for me, just so everyone else in the audience knows, like as a co-sponsor, it depends on, like, we have 3 funds, for example, that we're running right now on our own portal, on our website, and our business for Madison Investing, where I am not the sponsor. We're doing work as a placement agent, and I'm a registered representative, all this other stuff. But in prior deals, I've been a co-sponsor. I'm not just doing capital raise, we're doing investor relations and all this other stuff. So there's different flavors of this too. And there's different aspects that I feel confident about, but I wouldn't go up to someone else and say, I'm a deep as expert as Brian on asset management, because I'm not. And I'm very comfortable saying that, because that's not what we do. What we do is we're really good at vetting people, and we're really good at vetting, are they capable of managing the asset? Because I don't live in Texas. I don't live in Florida. I don't live in Virginia. Like it's about leaning into that more. So for me, I have interviewed hundreds of people behaviorally at every level of possible leadership, whether it's VPs, SVPs, directors, frontline folks, all kinds of folks. And so that, and quantitatively, I'm not a slouch, so it just depends on, like, I leaned into that as heavily as I possibly could, and beefed up the rest. It's about, those are my strengths, and I had to complement the weaknesses and make sure that I also partnered with the right people to make the message make sense to people and have it be authentic. Yeah. Because if it wasn't authentic and I was like, I'm a real estate expert through and through, and I've done this 1,000 times, it just wouldn't be honest. It has to be coming from 100% accurate place, at least for me to pull it off that way.
Yeah, and what I had to do, and this was kind of a foot switch for me, is if you were following my LinkedIn profile, for 15, 18 years, or ever since I got LinkedIn, the first thing on there was, Marine, or had something to do with the Marine Corps. I mean, the Marine Corps does a really good job about, welding, your identity as a Marine, into the fabric of your whole being. And so, something about it was Marine. And there was one point where, this was probably 2.5 years ago, where I kept on getting a response, aren't you a Marine? I took that off my LinkedIn profile. And for some reason, that was kind of a big mental shift for me. And the ball started rolling a lot faster after that. I took Marine off and I put multifamily investor, and it was almost like my LinkedIn profile was my identity. And as soon as I started seeing myself as a multifamily investor, all of a sudden things started happening, because prior to that, I was still Brian the Marine. I was handing out business cards that said Lieutenant Colonel Brian Briscoe,
Right.
and that's, I think, exactly what you said. You have to have the confidence in yourself. You have to know that you're able to, in your case, vet the right people who can deliver. In my case, it was I was able to find partners and coaches and a team around me where we could deliver to. But a huge part of it was definitely similar to what you put out there. So, all right. So, sorry, just got distracted by somebody joining the room. But anyway, so what else? We got about 15 to 20 minutes left. Any big wave tops about your story that you want to hit before we jump into advice and first steps, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the topics that we talked about, we covered today, and I want to make sure I hit it head on for folks because they're probably looking for being able to take action, or maybe you have an actual project that you're trying to raise capital for, but capital raising, just more generally, if that's okay, Brian. So I want to talk for a second about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I
think just in the last week, I mentioned to you guys that we had one of our actual investors reached out, and this is like a common occurrence. I get excited for folks, when folks in our investing group who have invested with us in Madison Investing already, when they say, I want to go and be active, like maybe they want to go and either do their own thing, capital raising wise, or maybe they want to go be a lead sponsor. I'd say that's the most common. Probably 10% maybe or so of our LPs, of our limited partners in our group are current or aspiring asset managers, like sponsors, operators, whatever you want to call them. And so, I think some people out there, maybe they have an allergic reaction to that if they're out there raising capital, like, oh, you're not going to be able to invest in my deal. I have the opposite reaction. I have the reaction like, hey, that's awesome. This stuff is not easy. But I have found consistently that the more you pay it forward in this world and in this business, the more it comes back around to you. And so, in some degree or another, I can help there sometimes, but sometimes it's just too darn busy. Like it's been crazy busy for me for the past month because we have so many deals running in parallel right now. But I bring that up, guys, because the common symptom I've seen for most folks that are struggling to get off the ground at first is they will reach out to me and they'll say, I'm having a hard time raising capital. And be like, well, how can I help? I'll try to help. And they'll say, well, I don't know what questions to ask. And it'd be like, cool. I think you'll get there. I could literally take a step back and abstract that exact conversation, apply it back over to the tech world, and just simply say, when a brand new fresh out of college person, a huge potential would come into a sales group, and they would say, hey boss, tell me how to go and pitch our product. And I would say, okay, you're asking the wrong questions. The first question is, what's the right posture? Because if you think you're going to go to someone and say, I need your money, it doesn't matter what questions I give you. It's not going to be good. It's not going to go well. The purpose is you're trying to find an alignment with someone else who they have the funds and they're trying to find a home for them. So it's about alignment. And you have to understand it's not your job to pitch anyone on really anything in this active capital raising. It's your job to understand what they're solving for and educate them about what is about to occur. And maybe they want to come along for that ride, because are there ways to actually ask the right question? What's your goal? Like before you even get into, what kind of real estate do you want to invest in? Man, that is like way too far down the rabbit hole already. You got to first understand if the person you're talking to hasn't explained who they are, what they do, why they do it, what is their goals in life, like all these things about do you have a passive versus monthly active income number that you're going for? Do you want growth? Are you trying, what's your portfolio look like? I'm just totally spitballing on the questions, guys, and just being super real, because I want to just light the spark for you to realize the common symptom that gives it away from you right off the bat is people treat capital raising like it's a pain in their ass. And it is not an afterthought. If you treat it like it's dirty, afterthought, not fun, something that you begrudgingly have to do, any of those things, that's how much you'll raise. If you would treat it with respect, and you treat it like, you're lucky I get to go do this, I get to go and actually educate people on how to prosper. Literally, that's how I actually think. That is what I actually do. And you have to just reframe the way you think about it, because if you're a great underwriter, you're probably not too excited about raising capital, and that's fine. You got to find something about it. You have to, or you have to find someone else to do it for you, because you're never going to do it well. It's only one of those two things. Either you learn to love it, or you find someone who does. There's no in between. So sorry for being so binary about it.
I think that's extremely helpful. I love the term alignment. You need to make sure that you're aligned. And I went through a long, slow process of exactly what you said, where it's like, oh crap, we got a deal under contract, and I told my partners I can raise $500,000. Oh my gosh, now I got to go do it.
Scary.
And you're right, with that attitude, I was, I was trying to get people to do me a favor and, invest with me, or trying to get people to, it was a chore is what it was. It wasn't I'm trying to help you out. It's like, hey, will you help me out? But I think that alignment is actually key, because if you can align, your investment with what your investors need, and if those two things line up well, I think that there's a lot of synergy that happens. There's a lot of just, people can see that. People can see that, yes, this is exactly what I need for my investment goals, for my financial goals. And I've had several people that I've talked to that when they tell me what their investment goals are, I'm like, yeah, sorry, we're not a good match. I'd love to, yeah, it happens. We've had, like, we do value-added apartments, which, don't cash flow a ton. You get a little bit of a pop at the end. But, I've had people come to me saying, hey, I want something that can spit out consistent cash for the next 8 to 10 years. And I'm like, hey, have you met my friend named so-and-so? Because that's what he does. It's not what I do. But
gosh, I love that point, man. Hey, just can I double down on that for one moment?
Yeah, please do.
It is fascinating. So in Silicon Valley, at least, I can just say that, that we probably got some crypto fiends on this group right now, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I'm the dumbass that sold my Bitcoin and Ethereum in 2018. So it doesn't get worse than that, guys. So got that going for you. I just wanted to say that, like, crypto, tech company stocks, these are all doing very well right now. The conversations are fascinating because everyone thinks that everything has to compete, like their capital has to outperform however their S&P index has been doing. They got to compete with how crypto's been growing. They got to compete. So they end up getting into these apples conversations, right? About which one wins, which one's better. I firmly believe, and I tell people openly, I'm not here to compare. I'm not here to sell them on a particular asset class, because it's just true. It's not the intent. The intent is educate them on a particular slice of how a portfolio can work for them. But it's also it's a different style of product in their portfolio, right? And so if someone comes in and they're saying, man, I can get this incredible return over on the, just if I hold into Bitcoin, great, more power to them. I think there's other people who are out there just trying to solve, like, for example, we just launched these 3 separate deals. This is not a plug for them. I'm just giving a point of comparison. One of them is a pure cash flow play, just cash flow. There's no upside. I can't tell you how many, like, emails that I got from people who are regular repeat investors in multifamily and storage, and they're like, why would I ever invest in this? There's no upside. And I'm like, great question.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
It's not right for you then. Yeah.
It's not right for you, but it was right for the guy who just invested over $800,000 in it with us. Mm-hmm. So, it's because he wants a different income stream because his wife is leaving her company. So it's a pure cash flow play. It's just that kind of stuff that matters, like alignment on goals. Mm-hmm. And I want to give credit to, I don't know if you guys know him, but really, really brilliant guy, operator, developer. I've heard him speak a couple of times and I read his book a couple of times, but Victor Menashe, just to give him credit for this, like his book is a pretty quick read. It's called Magnetic Capital. Excellent book. And I thought it was excellent because he just gives you these core principles about, an investment. I think he uses a shoe analogy, and I'm not a shoe guy necessarily. We'll plug Allbirds, all about them Allbirds these days. It's like walking on a cloud. But I think other than that, he basically says an investment is like a pair of shoes, and he plays it out way more eloquently on paper than I could do it right now, basically saying that it has to fit the investor on every possible area. It can't just be the right color, can't just be the right size, can't just be the right construction of it, right? It has to be everything across the board, and if one of those is wrong, it's not aligned. And frankly, just like you said, Brian, that's fine. That's totally fine, because the more you crave and you want someone to come in and invest with you, the more that they're going to run away. And so it's just so critical to talk about, like, start with the goals. Don't start with the deal. Start with the goals, and understand what they're going for.
And something that's interesting that I never thought would have happened, but I have told people no when they ask to invest with us because of that reason. Maybe they were, hey, I'm looking for this type of return. I just really want to invest in something. And a lot of them, a year or sometimes 2 years later, come back and say, hey, I'm ready now. I'm really ready now. So it's one of those things that's kind of counterintuitive. A lot of, I mean, to me at first it was, but when you really think about it, no, it's not, but anyway.
Can I add one more thing to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we were the first ones to use this term at Madison Investing, but like I hadn't heard it before, and it just seemed to make the most sense for the term. But like a boomerang investor, to me, I did a couple posts on this on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so, because this happened a couple times now. I think this happened about 6 times for 6 separate people in our current investing group. I talked to them now a course of maybe 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, where they reached out to us. And at the time, they were either mid-project on a rehab, on a BRRRR, or they were about to go and buy some rentals and do them hands-on, by the way. In all these cases, all these investors were eager to go and manage hands-on. Full-time jobs across the board, highly paid professionals, all of them in technology companies. None of these are inherently good or bad things. I'm just stating the facts as they occurred. They all came back 2 years later with less money, unprofitable projects, and a very big frustration. And then they said, now I'd like to talk to you about passive investing. And it was a fascinating exercise. And I just sat there and listened and asked follow-up questions because I wanted to hear their story. I genuinely care, I genuinely care about this stuff. We're not trying to sit over here and grow at all costs. That's not the type of investor I am. I'm like a lifestyle investor, if you want to call it anything. They wanted to find out a good strategy for them to continue actually building their wealth without having to go and give up all of their free time and a lot of their investable capital to try to maximize their returns by doing it hands-on, when they learned they didn't like the real estate hands-on construction element that much personally. And some people do, some people love it, some people don't. And that boomerang investor thing, I don't know, we got to trademark it at some point or something.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens very frequently, at least out here in the Bay Area, I would say. And I'm starting to bump into more folks who it's happening to.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about, I think, actionable steps that people who are just starting their journey can take to be able to attract capital. Yeah.
So exercise, I would recommend, the kind of that you guys do is, and I'll tell you exactly what we did, and you maybe try a version of this. It might not be exactly the same. So first and foremost, I would decide what is going to be the thing that you're raising capital for. You don't have to get a property address. It doesn't have to be like 123 Main Street, right? As long as you pick, okay, am I going for, X unit count, give or take? Am I going for Y price point, give or take? Am I going for, is it going to be, quads? Are you going to go for like a 4 unit? And you generally know the types of markets and quality or condition of that building. Are you going to go for a 100 unit, like, aim for the fences, go to 70 or 100 unit multifamily property, bringing on partners to help you manage it all, and you simultaneously want to go out and do some value add on top of it? Like, start there and just really work on, like, think about what are you going for, because that will guide other decisions as well, would be my recommendation. Because if you go out and you say, we're going to get to step 2 here in a moment. If you go out to all your network and you say, hey, I want to go raise capital for real estate, you want to invest with me, you're not giving them something to react to besides the fact that it's you. And so you got to give it, I mean, it's also, there's nothing harder for a person that cares about you to have to sit there and say no to you.
Mhm.
Like, you're making that very uncomfortable on them. And frankly, it's not going to go well. And so you got to give them something else to react to. And that way the question might not even be, hey, do you want to invest with me? It's a, hey, do you know anyone else who might be interested in this?
Yeah.
Right. And so that's step number one. Create a mock deal, right? Of some type.
And I'll parachute in it for just a second. If you're a lead sponsor, that's also very important to do if you're trying to get deals from brokers. I mean, so I think no matter what you're doing in this business, figure out what that criteria is. So anyway, just
totally
pulling my parachute back out now.
Yeah, no, parachute anytime.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I would do is, sit there and understand your story. And this might sound a little ethereal to you guys, but I'll try to make it really real for you. So you have one. You have your own story. And whether you think it's not exciting or not, someone else, like, I want to hear it. I want to hear your version of it. I want to hear all the trials and tribulations of it, the key milestones of it. You need to understand what that is. And like, what is the pain? What are the big crosses you bared? Like, what brought you to be at this point where you're sitting in this meeting theoretically with a person and saying, hey person, trust me with a reasonably large amount of capital, probably a 5-digit number, or not 6-digit number up and up. Because, and here's a real example. First big podcast I ever went on, it had to, of course, it had to be bigger than I was even ready for at that point in my mind. In hindsight, I think I went on Rod Khleif's. Love Rod Khleif, good guy. And I got that many leads from that, and I thought I showed up pretty well. But why didn't it resonate? It's because it wasn't fully authentic. I didn't share those key milestones and points in the story because I hadn't mapped it out. I practiced once I went on. And in my mind, I failed. I listened to it again and it was fine, but it didn't generate the business outcomes I wanted. That's a failure for me. So what I went back is I reworked it, literally practiced over 100 times, probably, maybe more, on how to tell my story succinctly. And you guys can be the judge as to whether that went well or not. Maybe today I'm blowing it, but I think I needed to do that. Went on subsequent podcasts, and our business is spiking growth like never before. Know your story. That's what they want to hear. They're still investing with you. And I'm like the 1,000th person you've probably heard say at this point, the key to raising capital is that the person has to know you, like you, and trust you. So like, all that will only occur if you can tell your own story with simplicity, clarity, and confidence. And so that's got to be number 2. Number 3, I would say you do want to figure out who you're targeting. And this one is going to feel a little bit trickier. It might take you a little longer. I think for us, what we literally did was, you got to play to strength. I had a network of on LinkedIn. I made tech network from my 5 companies I worked at. 5 companies I worked at over 13 years. And then I had people I had literally only added on LinkedIn if I knew them in the real world for 10 years. I had 2,000 people I had added. I'm that kind of weirdo. I only literally added people I knew in the real world, first degree connection, over 10 years. So I had 2,000 captive audience there. We built a survey. When I say we, I mean my co-founders, my wife, and my partner. So Jennifer and I built a survey. It was 12 to 15 questions. And the intent was not to pitch a single thing. And we didn't. I went out, I recorded 60 conversations with people in my network that I didn't know that well. I was first degree connections on LinkedIn. Like, we knew who we were. Like we had an awareness of each other. But a lot of people were willing to take the meeting because I just said, I want to understand how you invest. I want to understand your relationship with money. Like, tell me how often you look at your portfolio. And all of these different questions. It sounds like you guys are sitting there probably going, why would that even be relevant? It's relevant because we had to put together this thing called, a lot of the real estate community likes to call it the avatar. In the corporate world I'm familiar with, we called it it was called the ICP. It's not the insane clown posse. Is that the ideal customer persona? And so that means just like defining who is this fictional person or people that you will be targeting. And that's where all of your messaging, all of your collateral, all of your talking points, all of the stuff you do will be centered around targeting that person or people. And so we did that. We did all that work. It was a lot of work. It was really slow. And it's this type of stuff that people try to just skip right over this, and like, because they want quick results. It was, yeah, I mean, I was sitting there every day wanting to run 1,000 miles a minute and say like, I'm going to go work on a deal right now. Well, today I have 6 back-to-back 60-minute recorded sessions where I have to ask these people dry questions, and then we have to categorize all the learnings and get all this insight. And anyways, I have a brilliant marketing brained wife and co-founder who is I'm thankful for every day. But you know, we did have some business acumen to help us on that journey as well, because all that stuff came back. Like, we still have a fictional person. We know how old they are. We know what jobs they hold. We know how many kids they have. We know, and when I say we know these things, I mean, we made it up, because that's the point of the exercise. If you put that ideal customer persona up against the actual general makeup of our #1 investor type in our group, it's dead on. It's remarkable how dead on it is.
I love how you did that, and you spent a lot of time basically doing market research. You know, who am I catering to? You know, looking at people who are already in your network and figuring out what makes them tick and how they make investment decisions. And I think that's huge. You know, because if you can answer that question, how are people making their decisions with the money? How are they making decisions on what to invest in? You know, and how do they react to certain things? You can tailor your ad campaign directly to them and hit your mark more times than not.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. And also, just, you can go in feeling like you've got, when all else fails and you're feeling like, sorry, I'm turning that off.
That's right.
When all else fails and you feel like, oh, like this week, what do I work on? You know, it's because that happens. That happens to everybody. I mean, like this month, this week, this day, what do I work on? How do I prioritize? That's your compass. And it's incredibly helpful. So I you know, I kind of went through all of that stuff. You guys are probably sitting there going like, when does the actual capital raising happen? Frankly, you can jump straight into doing this, but that is what most people do. And it's about big long-term growth that is sustainable.
Yeah.
And so, not interested in flashes in the pan, not interested in one-time flashy deals. Taking your time to get to know people, and then making smart decisions and a foundation for success is the ticket.
I think what most people do is, and you've probably seen this as well, but most people go first to their inner circle, their family, and their close friends. And it's natural. I mean, it makes sense. It's like, okay, I have to raise $250,000 or $500,000 to get this deal across the finish line. Those are the first people you're going to ask for. But those people, in most people's cases, are going to run out of money after deal number 1, deal number 2. And what you're doing, you basically gave a recipe for sustainable. It's not like you're running a marathon. You're preparing for a long marathon where you're going to be doing this as a business for a long time, as opposed to, let me go talk to all my friends and all their friends, and you know, maybe I get one deal, but then what?
That's right. Yeah, and even just targeting, like thinking beyond the deal, getting yourself into, like, you know, we really tried to position ourselves in a place where it's about relationships and stop going for the transaction. You know, it's a really hard mindset to get into and stay into. Stop chasing the deal, start actually investing in the relationship, because then it just changes the whole nature of it. Like, anytime I've ever felt compelled to push someone, you know, because like, if you think I have to hit this number and that's where you're going into the conversation, you know, it's not going to go your way. It has to be about, oh, how can I add value to this person in a way that's actually useful? And along the way, I would like to understand, what are they solving for? You know, are they solving for a cash flow number? Is this person actually trying to pivot out of their day job? Anyways, I just wanted to share a couple things there.
Yeah. Okay, so you did your market research, you nailed down your target. What's next? Where to from there?
Yeah, I mean, you do eventually have to get down to some of those, the brass tacks items. I think if people haven't necessarily set up, you know, so I'll just rattle off the table stakes, the things I consider table stakes. Like you got to have them. Got to have a good looking website that's functional. Got to have a social media presence. And I strongly recommend picking one and being really good at one. I think one of the kisses of death on social media, just to say it bluntly, is people trying to be everywhere. You can eventually be everywhere. Sure. I don't think you're going to connect with people that much. I am also, admittedly, and I've got a couple friends on here, Brian included, who would probably be the first to say that, like, I don't really do a great job on my other social media presences. My Facebook is pretty dry, and I tell people literally in my Facebook headline, like, find me on LinkedIn or something like that. Like, LinkedIn is my chosen focus. And why? It has the highest average net worth per user, and it's where I already had a good footing, and it aligns with our targeting investor customer profile. That's why I use LinkedIn. I didn't pick it because I liked it the most. I picked it because the business case made sense. And so that's our business. That does not necessarily mean it's better. It's not. I mean, there's a bunch of brilliant folks out there that I look at their Instagram presence and I'm like, oh my God, like they are absolutely crushing it, and they're really adding value for people, and people are reciprocating with their engagement. And so it just depends on leaning into, got to have a respectable online website presence. You got to make sure that you're actually setting yourself up at social media in such a way where, I mean, just to say it bluntly, guys, like, if someone has to really go out of their way to find legitimate information about you, they're gone in like 30 seconds. So you got it has to be like basics are clean. I sure hope you have a headshot on your social media profile that isn't a picture of, like, a frog or a picture your kids made, or just like professionalism, bare bones matters. Just all those things matter. And it's just try to go back all the way to, like, that exercise I told you about with the investor profile, because, like, maybe that resonates with some people than others. Like, if you're targeting a demographic that is like folks who are younger, right? Like, if you're targeting like younger folks, maybe LinkedIn isn't the right place. Maybe it's Instagram, and so, or maybe even TikTok. And so, like, one thing that we haven't necessarily talked about here too, Brian, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole unless people really want to. Most people go to sleep when I bring this topic up. But I think it's important, is like, you got to understand compliance, man.
You get yourself in a lot of trouble if you don't.
That's right.
So,
yeah. So like, we wanted to scale our business in such a way and operate very purely in the black and white. That is how I like to interpret things anything of a legal nature and compliance nature. And that's why I'm a registered securities professional. And so that means anything business related, for any one of those posts you see me post on LinkedIn, that means I had to have another person approve it first. So I batch write my business related posts on social media, because if you want to be registered and you want to have, like, a FINRA sponsored broker dealer, actually review and approve all your deals, and all the funds flow through the proper channels like that. You don't have to go that path. There's other paths where you can use funds of funds models and a lot of other stuff. But, like, talk to qualified people, like attorneys, and make sure that you're operating in a way that is 100% compliant, because it's real world out there. Like, I would encourage you just to start slow, get the right advice, and then build from there. But don't just jump in. Man, it breaks my heart when I see people go on a Facebook group and they say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Should I go do this? And they lay out a legal plan, and they're asking for Facebook post forums for their legal advice. And I think, man, I lose sleep over that. So please don't do that. Please go talk to a lawyer.
I've seen some bad advice given on those things, and it's, that's maybe why I don't have a lot of hair, is because I keep on pulling my hair out every time I see that. But
yeah, no kidding.
We've probably paid our attorney easily six figures, since we started this business, and most of it's, keeping us compliant. And when we bring capital raisers in, hey, the SEC is very much involved in this business, and I'm glad you bring it up. But that's probably a nugget that a lot of people overlook when they're first starting out, is you need at least, at the bare minimum, be compliant with what the SEC is telling you to do, because that's it could cause a lot of problems down the road. And people who know what the rules are, if they see you break the rules, they're going to want to be as far as they can from you. They're going to, all right, you know what? I don't want to even touch this. So
that's right.
Yeah. So compliance. All right. All right. So
more tactics. I got some more tactics for
you. Let's say another 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll close up shop, and we'll go into networking with everybody.
Cool.
So let's hit some tactics.
tactics, I would just say it's really hard to get away from needing an email list. So kind of pick your poison, you know. We use MailChimp. A lot of people really like ActiveCampaign, handful of others, because the advice you'll hear out there, you know, we just talked about social media. Social media is owned by someone else. It will never be owned by you. Your profile will never be owned by you. They could turn you off tomorrow. They could turn me off tomorrow, and then they're gone, and your presence is gone. That's pretty big risk. I mean, any business risk that is, I mean, just as heavy as compliance. The moment that one thing can come in and just say, you're done. Same thing with social media. I look at that like that. That is a risk to be mitigated in perpetuity. So you mitigate compliant risk in perpetuity by operating compliantly and adhering strictly to the rules. And when it comes to your audience, like ensuring that you can like build your audience will be best thing that we've got out there really at this point is your email list. And so a mail list, like whether it's MailChimp or ActiveCampaign, would be a really great idea. You know, there's other ways to do it. There's other software I'm probably not even up to speed on for sure, but that's got to be it. I have yet to hear a better, more sustainable way, you know, to curate your audience. I even know there's a couple of really great, like awesome folks that are out there right now, like pretty established podcasters that recently said, I'm leaving social media. I'm only just going to go lean in heavy to my email list because I'm tired of having the algorithm messing around with my engagement, with my audience. And I have tons of respect for that because you own it, you know?
It's hard. I mean, a lot of people spend a lot of time, you know, I think Google ads, you know, people spend a lot of time understanding the Google algorithms to make sure you have this search engine optimization and everything else so you can do everything you can. But as soon as Google or Facebook or LinkedIn change how they put information in front of people, I mean, you have to start over again. But I think that's very important, that email list.
Yeah. I mean, I think beyond that, though, we talked about kind of like the audience. How do you like get to the audience? Starting with like, who are you trying to target? I do think that folks in general, guys, if there is an area of communication on the tech, whether it's like your website construction, I mean, maybe I'll just focus on that for a sec, because it could be a real blocker for folks, and I just don't want it to be. We're on our third version of our website. I don't think you personally need to go pay someone to go and build a fancy website for you out the gates. Now, I take that with a big grain of salt. Please understand the person saying that. I was at tech companies. I wasn't a software developer. I was on the business side, right? So like, it doesn't take rocket science, but I would say you want to have control and the ability to update that website frequently. It's a damn shame when I see people go pay a Upwork builder who, you know, 10 grand to go build a website, and then they have to call that person, and that person charges them a fee every time they want to change. They want to add the word "the" to a paragraph. They just got swindled. And so Wix.com, Weebly.com, these are all great places with very easy to use website builders. And now if you lack in style and you just want to have a good style eye, I don't necessarily, but I have enough to keep myself, you know, out of hot water in terms of design. Like, put it in front of other people, just get their feedback, you know, ask capable design friends, you know. But just on the website, I just wanted to get on the soapbox there for a second, because it really is interesting. It hurts people when they sign up and they go pay someone a lot of money just because they hear the words so early. I'm all about outsourcing. I love that there's so much focus on outsourcing in the real estate community for efficiency's sake. And if you get a W-2 job and you got to outsource a website developer, don't do it, because you just don't want to learn a little bit about how to manage your own website. You're going to burn thousands of dollars, and you're going to burn tons of hours waiting for them to make an update. So just wanted to say that. Sorry for the very niche soapbox, but
yeah. Well, I mean, we use Wix, and we actually had our own website. We didn't pay a penny until just recently, but probably almost 2 years of self-managing the website. And you get something functional at first. And then, you know, you use a very marine example. We dig fighting holes, you know, you're always improving your fighting position. The same thing with your website. You know, you're always, you know, start with something that's functional.
Yeah.
You know, and getting something out that's functional is more important than getting the perfect product out.
Completely. Yeah. And I love seeing some of the comments on the side there. Like Stu mentioned that, you know, it's so easy to build a website now. Completely agree. It's just a different game, you know, and
drag and drop.
Yeah. And like, it doesn't have to have incredible graphics. It just needs to have the information in the first 10 seconds. That's how long you've got, guys. You got like 10 seconds, basically. Like, people hit your website if they can't answer the question of who are you, what do you do, why do you do it?
Whoops. Spencer, I accidentally muted you.
That was Brian's way of saying I'm done.
No. Somebody joined the conversation and I clicked the wrong spot and it muted you. But yeah, so
Yeah.
my
So I know
apologies.
we're over in time, but I'm just trying to think of,
Yeah.
I think we kind of hit the key ones. I mean, in the end, just remember, like, no matter what happens, guys, like, don't rush into trying to drive to a decision for people. The most guaranteed way to scare folks away, if we're talking about capital raising, is time pressure. Time pressure and any pressure, really. It just has to do with, like, it's not a push, it's a pull. If you want to talk about the physics of it, not to get too ethereal here, it's not a push. It has to be someone pulling toward. It's not something that aligns with their goals, and you can't know the goals unless you ask what they are. And that's kind of the trick here. The trick question that's actually helpful, I think, is if you don't know them and you haven't asked, and you're like, well, I don't even know that. What am I supposed to do? Be like, go back and ask.
So when I get a new investor on a call or a potential investor on a call, one of the questions that I almost always ask, every once in a while the conversation goes different directions, but I will specifically ask, what are your investment goals? Or what are you looking to get out of a real estate investment? We're on the phone because you're interested. And, if, like I said, if they say something that's completely off kilter with what you do, you got to kind of tell them that. And then the other point that you brought up, I think is important. Don't ever be in a time crunch to raise, so if you want to be a deal sponsor, you want to do this, start the money raising early, give them that sample deal packet, build it first, but give them that sample deal packet, something to look at. And then I think you keep on coming back to you've got to build the relationship. You've got to create that know, like, and trust. But all right, Spencer, any other big pearls of wisdom before we turn to networking?
I mean, honestly, I think that just think of it like a conversation, an ongoing dialogue, and it's your job to make sure that you never leave that dialogue on the table. I know that might be hard to wrap your head around right now, or you'd be like, what are you actually talking about? What I mean is, we didn't have deals ready to share with our investor group at Madison Investing until about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was a lot of buildup. We had a quiet 4 months because it was all just getting ready and, like, making sure the deals were ready to launch. And there's a lot that goes into fund formation and all this stuff. But that didn't mean we weren't sending things. That meant, like, frankly, we were just being able to share some of the materials that we had been studying anyways, like census data plugged into the markets, reflecting why we chose the markets that we chose. Sharing my opinion and trying to add value as to why certain data coming out around occupancy rates in multifamily was something that required you to take a click beneath the top level. These are just random examples I'm bringing out that we actually put into our newsletters. And, like, okay, occupancy rates, everyone says, they're looking really rosy. I actually think that they are. I mean, but you slice that by A, B, C, not quite as rosy. C's got some cracks in the armor. Like, these are all ways to have an ongoing dialogue with your investor base. And as soon as you can figure out a personal connection to your investor base beyond just what is the money you want to put into this deal to get a return, now you're talking. Because the single biggest investment that that we've ever taken occurred in, like, the last month in this business. It never would have happened unless I had a personal relationship that was built on, frankly, a lot of the tattoos and metal that you might see me involved in outside of real estate. So, like, that's the stuff that might matter more, arguably, than I would say. If you're getting past all the acumen and all the email lists and all the business acumen, technical stuff, like, you gotta make a connection with a human being because they have plenty of choices.
Yeah. So good. So, I mean, just recapping, a lot of solid information. I started keeping the list of what it is, but figure out what your criteria is, what you're offering people. Figure out your story, how to tell it. Who's your target. You talked about the website, the social media presence. Building that email list, staying in contact with people. All those things come long before you ever ask anybody for a penny. So do all those things. Take the time to set up the processes. And then when you have a deal, it's a push of a button. I follow a lot of people, but a couple months ago, Michael Blanc, he did a $7 million raise, and it took him 2 days to fully fund because they have put so much time and effort into building up that system. And it's to the point to where right now it's push a button, email goes out, have a webinar, push another button, money comes in. And that was 2 days to have everybody's money in the bank, not 2 days to have everybody say, I'm going to put my money in. But, and what Spencer's telling you is exactly how to do that, how to get to the point where you have it all set up so that it's a push button raise. You've got the relationship, you've got the email address, you've sent out, your monthly newsletters that keeps them interested, tells them what you're doing, feeds them. And then when time comes for an actual deal, it's a push button. It's like, hey guys, I've warmed you up for this. Here's the deal that aligns with what you guys are looking for. And then from there, it's just counting checks. So
yeah, well, I appreciate you capturing my rantings in a somewhat organized list. I think, don't be shocked by the deep FAQ though. My one warning for folks is like, people can and should want to ask deep questions. Like just because they said that they really like the deal, that has nothing to do with them actually investing with you. Like they're going to probably have the smart people, the people who want to bring bigger capital amounts and actually participate with you over a period of 5 to 7 to 10, whatever years, with $200, $300, $400, $800,000. The bigger the amount, the more questions they should ask, and you should proactively be prepared to answer. And like that means having the documentation ready, some pro forma, being able to go down to the cell with them. Cell within an Excel sheet, and not just tell the story in the big picture, but don't take it personally when they come back and they're like, okay, I've got about 40 questions for you. And you're like, oh, that's all, just gotta buckle up but you can do an FAQ, proactively create an FAQ before you actually launch, because you're going to use it.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, we have gotten better and better at our webinars and our pitch decks based on all of those questions, so it's a preemptive strike. Our first pitch deck probably wasn't very good, and our first webinar was probably horrible, and we thought we crushed it, right? Yeah. But the more you do it and spend time watching other people's webinars, so get on my list, get on Spencer's list, and when they have a webinar, watch it, take notes of what's going on and what you guys thought was good and what wasn't. But anyway, let's close it up here. Spencer, thanks a ton for coming on. Very much appreciate it. And every time I talk to you, I come away with 10,000 to the 10,000 time more respect. My 8-year-old has just grasped the concept of raising numbers to a power. So that's why it's right in my mind. The biggest number, 10,000 to the 10,000 to the 10,000 to the 10,000. But yeah, I got a nerd for an 8-year-old, so I'm a nerd too.
Thank you. Honored to be here. I like it. There's so many meetup options out there, and I just think like you've built one of the best ones that I've actually seen, and it's awesome. Like this is an awesome group. Yes. Thank you for all the questions and the commentary on the side, guys. This is awesome.
All right. Did we get any? There was a bunch of questions. Did we get any that we didn't cover? That's a good point.
I think I got a handful of ones that were like sent directly to me, but maybe just answer them really quickly, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Mauricio, this one's for you. I think in terms of so Mauricio asked about MailChimp and what role do we use like MailChimp for in the business? Is it for investor relations stuff or for only email blasts? And so I think just broadly, we use MailChimp for two things. We use them for kind of newsletters. So we do a monthly newsletter. I know everybody does, but I like to think ours are pretty darn good. And the other one is really just for, I take it back. It's for three different things. The other one is for deal alerts. When you announce a deal, that's what we call it. You could brand it a bunch of different things, but when you announce a new project and then folks go into our investor portal, for our investor portal, we use Syndication Pro. We switched to that recently. We're pretty pleased with it so far. The other thing we use it for is for just ongoing monthly project updates, because we do investor relations on really all of our deals for the duration of the whole period. And so so we're sending out monthly project updates or quarterly project updates, mostly or monthly. But those are the three big use cases for MailChimp: newsletter, and then we do deal alerts when we launch a deal, and update on a deal as a raise proceeds, and then monthly project updates. So those are those three ones. Taking a look otherwise. Yeah, it's kind of a follow comment or a different comment to Mauricio, just about like tagging and lists and stuff. And just to mention briefly, guys, that like that's the stuff when you start building an email list, that there's just no right way necessarily to do it. I would just say pick a way though, because it can, if you just kind of throw stuff in there and you're kind of like not using a whiteboard, if you're not stepping back from the screen and thinking about how will this work if this goes well, and in 2 years from now, what do we want to look back at ourselves for 2 years from now and say, man, those guys made a really good decision. What you don't want to do is like have that thought exercise and go back and say, what are the things that we would not do? And then, man, those guys were dummies. Like it sounds simple, but like tagging, all that kind of stuff. I don't want to bore people with like MailChimp configuration, but yeah.
I'd say the most important thing you need to keep track of inside your whatever form you use is compliance issues. If you're doing a 506B, you have to have a substantial relationship with somebody, and you've got to make sure that that would be the one single thing that if you're doing right inside your MailChimp or your active campaign, is you're tagging people as these are people I can market deals to, these are people I can't. So
that is a really good call. Yeah. I mean, even just, I would say within our list, that's also how we have historically cut it, is like accredited investors and sophisticated investors, or just AKA sophisticated non-accredited investors. Yeah. But I mean, these days we primarily focus on 506C, which means we can send them to everybody, but we just still have to verify accreditation.
They're accredited, right? Yeah. All right. Can you talk about real quick, when your deals as a rookie, what worked and what didn't? So your $75,000 raise, or maybe the next one after. A couple of things that worked for you and a couple of things that you wish you'd have done better.
Sure. I think you just can't force the relationship build speed. I mean, the speed, there's that follow-up book from, Stephen Covey is one of those forefathers of amazing personal development. Speed of Trust. There you go. His son wrote that book, Speed of Trust. And the speed of trust, you cannot rush that. And so that's kind of why you want to start really early, like even if you don't have a deal, and just like, have some fun with it. Like put together a few of the things that I've mentioned here and Brian mentioned and others have mentioned on the topic, because I don't consider myself necessarily an expert in this stuff at all. I mean, I just think that I've studied the folks that came before me and try to tailor it, right? So like go out and start that, like build relationships with people and say, hey, in 6 months, I'd like to continue the conversation and get your feedback on something. And don't ask them for the transaction. Don't ask them for their capital. I mean, but just value their feedback and be sincere about that. And that way you can avoid what I went to, which was like, I had signed myself up to go partner on this deal. And it was like, wow, how much can I help? I think I can help a lot. Couldn't help that much. And it was because I was still the tech guy to my connections, right? I was still the tech guy pinging hundreds of people in my network with a beautifully crafted email, completely fell flat. Because that's what happens, and it's not just me; it happens to everybody. Like
mine did too. I was the Marine.
Yeah, I mean, so you got to just start that conversation, because it's going to take the people you know the most are going to be the slowest to change in their perception of you, and so it might not even be them that you want to focus on. You got to start there, but like it's almost like a warm up on how to have that conversation. So I don't know if that was helpful, Carmen, but I'd say that like trying to create urgency only makes it worse. And so just start to build the relationship and give yourself a solid 3 to 6, if not longer, months to begin reframing who you are in their eyes.
All right, love it. All right, cool. So we're going to move on to networking. And since, once again, Spencer, thank you so much, and very much appreciate this. All right, I'm going to hit the stop button on record.